the breakout session here this afternoon. We've got a session on the renewable energy workforce. My name is Ken Walls. I'm the program director for the renewable energy program at Madison Area Technical College. I also serve as the director for the Center for Renewable Energy Advanced Technological Education, which is funded by the National Science Foundation. And this session was put together between Madison College, CREATE, and the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. I sort of structured the time here that we have together for the next hour into thirds. The first third, we've got two job task analyses that we've been working on that I'd like to share with the audience here and gather some feedback on. The sort of second third of the session, we'll talk a little bit about some strategic planning and visioning for the next 5 to 10 years for the industry. And then the latter part of the conversation, and really the bulk of the time, I'd like to just open up the floor for discussion and conversation to get feedback from folks that are here participating today. So let me just share a couple slides here to kind of frame up the first part of our discussion. And let me see if I can get that to advance. Whoops. So two areas that we've been working on with the CREATE Energy Center that we've identified for future growth are energy storage and SCADA systems, supervisory controls and data acquisition. And we've been working with the MREA and a couple other technical colleges from around the country to draft some job task analyses for these sectors. These are two topics that typically are not included in most educational training programs today, but we know that they are growing and becoming much more important. These JTAs have been reviewed by academic instructors, and kind of the point we're at right now is to solicit further review, commentary, and validation by industry experts. And then the purpose of these job task analyses will be to guide development of programs and curriculum going forward for education providers. So I want to take a few minutes just to share those with you. I will tell you that all of these materials are available on a Google Drive link that I'll share with you in just a little bit, where you can download them for further review, and you can send feedback and comment to me at my email address here, kwalls@madisoncollege.edu. So let me just go ahead. The energy storage job task analysis first. We modeled these documents after the NABCEP JTA for the solar energy field. Some of you may be familiar. NABCEP is the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners, and they've kind of led the way on establishing industry validated credentials for the solar and also for the wind industry. And we modeled these after the sort of template that they've used, which breaks the job down into several domains, and then each of the domains down into smaller competencies, skills, and knowledge that the individuals should acquire. So for the energy storage job task analysis, the 5 domains were applications, sales and economics, design, installation, commissioning, and then O&M. And I'm going to switch over to a different document here so we can take just a little bit closer look at that. Let's see if I can make this work. So if we take a little closer look, those are the 6 domains, and I'm just going to kind of scroll through each of those quickly so we can take a look at some of the subtopics. In the first domain, the application domain, we break that down into several tasks, identifying and defining different types of energy storage, describing different types of energy storage applications, differentiating between the 2 most predominant battery technologies, lithium and lead acid, listing the key components of energy storage types, understanding safety concerns, identifying and listing advantages and disadvantages, identifying past and future innovations in energy storage, and then really just understanding and describing how each of the other job task analysis domains relate to one another. This is sort of the broadest of the domains, and it's the one that we think will be most likely integrated into the largest number of training programs nationwide. The second domain focuses on sales and economics. And if we break that down, you know, task one is identifying customer information and identifying their needs, identifying features and benefits of energy storage, identifying the customer's motivations, conveying to the customer energy efficiency considerations, addressing different variables in energy storage, recognizing how to keep these customers' goals and expectations realistic, and then identifying the different interconnection and backed up load options. The third domain of the job task analysis is the design, and this is the most detailed. It's really the most complex part of the energy storage sector. If we break that down into tasks, we start with identifying design requirements, analyzing the customer's electrical usage, identifying applicable codes and standards, assessing the site for the equipment to be used, describing the function of typical components, obviously identifying equipment specs, and then configuring the mechanical design, configuring the electrical design, and configuring the monitoring and control systems. Then preparing project documentation, securing permits and approvals, identifying necessary disconnects, sort of rounds out the tasks for the design domain. The fourth domain is installation. This is also kind of one of the more lengthy ones. This is where the actual hardware hits the road, so to speak. The first task, developing a site-specific safety plan so that you can work. Task two, safeguarding against hazards, so managing risk. Identifying elements of installation. Then actually installing the storage components, installing the inverter components and related equipment, and then installing the components for the backed up loads, and finally completing the utility interconnection. If we take a look at the fifth domain being commissioning, we broke that down into reviewing and developing the commissioning protocol, system inspection, electrical testing, and then handover of documentation and any sort of as-built drawings and that type of paperwork. And then the sixth domain is operations and maintenance. And we broke that down into reviewing and developing an O&M safety protocol, describing necessary for servicing energy storage, and then verifying system operation and performance. So I'm going to just take a moment to sort of pause there and open things up for anybody that would have any immediate comments that spring to mind. But you know, just to kind of let you folks know where we're at with this job task analysis, we're now seeking feedback on that, and then this task analysis will be used to design curriculum for the technical colleges as well for other nonprofit trainers like the MREA or Solar Energy International, or really anybody that has a desire to develop energy storage as part of their curriculum, which I think most renewable energy providers are at this point. So let me just pause for a moment there and ask if anybody has any questions or comments at this point before I go further. And I should also mention, if you don't have access to audio, you can also put the comments in the chat box, and they should come across on my dashboard if all goes well, and I can watch for them there and view them there. The other thing that I will do while we're pausing here before I go forward is I'm going to go in the chat box, and I will provide the link to the folder on Google Drive where you can download these documents if you'd like to access a copy and look at them when you have a little bit more time to digest, or to share them with other folks in your organization or other professionals you know that might have an interest in providing feedback. Samara is asking a question, do you anticipate tech ed teachers in high schools being able to use these? That's a really good question, and it actually kind of relates to some of the work we do with the Create Energy Center. We do a lot of outreach to high school STEM educators, science, technology, engineering, and math. We run a Solar Energy Institute every summer for high school STEM teachers, where in a non-COVID environment, we bring them to our campus, and over the course of 3 days, we walk them through a full residential solar installation. On the first day, they get hard hats and tools, and then we take them through the complete process so they understand what the job looks like. And then on the back half of that institute, we work through a bunch of smaller bench scale activities that they could replicate at their own school using smaller equipment that's more affordable on a typical high school teacher's budget. At this point, we have not included energy storage in that curriculum or controls for that matter. But we anticipate in the future that is something that may happen. The first step will be integrating these technologies into our existing degree programs at the college. And then once we've piloted it with our students, once we've built out our instructional laboratories, we might then be able to expand that and push some of that down to the K-12 sector.
How many teachers participate that in a normal summer?
Well, we've been running that institute in Wisconsin for the past 6 years, and we typically have somewhere between 20 and 24 students, or I should say teacher participants each summer. We've actually had people from around the country come to Wisconsin to participate in that workshop. So wow. In the years just before the COVID outbreak, we ended up running a similar workshop on the East Coast in Delaware, one out in Seattle, and then another down in Illinois at Heartland Community College with one of our partners down there. And we have plans to launch one in North Carolina, and then we got kind of sideswiped by the virus. But hopefully once we get a vaccine rolled out and we're back to a normal, healthy operating situation, we'll be able to resume those trainings. We usually hold them in the summer for accommodating teacher schedules. And if you're curious to know more about that, I would encourage you to visit the Create Energy Center. It's just createenergy.org. And if you sign up for our email listserv, you'll get copies of our newsletter that goes out twice a year, and it always announces the summer workshops and has a link to the application information.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for the question. I appreciate you asking. I'm going to go ahead and share another document with folks just to look at the second of the job task analyses that we've been working on. Oh, and that's the wrong document. Hang on a sec. I think I clicked the wrong window. Let me see if I can fix that. Let's see. Don't freeze up on me now, mouse. Let's see if I can get back over there. Try this once more. There we go. This is the second JTA that we've been working on, which is for supervisory controls and data acquisition. We've actually been working on this with two other community colleges, Indian River State College from Florida and College of the Canyons in California, as well as our industry partners with NextEra Energy. If you're not familiar, they're a huge renewable energy developer, actually one of the largest renewable energy companies in the world right now. Just to kind of put this in context, when I started working at Madison College, we installed our first photovoltaic array in 2002. And if you wanted to get some data from that system, if you had the keys to the mechanical room closet, you could go down there with your notebook and a pencil, and you could look at the little LED screen on the inverter, and you could record two numbers. It would tell you the instantaneous power output of the system in kilowatts and the lifetime energy produced in kilowatt hours. And that was it. That was all we had for a data monitoring system. Last year in 2019, Madison College installed the largest rooftop solar system in the state of Wisconsin. We now have over 5,700 panels on the roof of our building. You can see a few of them in the backdrop behind me here. Every one of those panels has its own individual communication signal that transmits data up to the cloud, and you can visit a web page, a monitoring site for our system, and it has real-time current and voltage outputs for each individual panel. It will also automatically monitor that, and if those values drop out of the specified window of operation where they're supposed to be, it'll automatically trigger an alert, and it sends me little notifications to my phone if it observes any sort of anomalies like that. The interesting thing about that is we had a crew of 50-some workers working on the system, of which there was one individual who was their controls and communications expert. And he had the knowledge and skills necessary to network all of the hardware so that it could communicate together, and also could program all of the software so that it processed that data correctly. So we kind of had a firsthand observation that this was a bit of a bottleneck, and we could also see that the industry was changing to have much more emphasis on controls and data acquisition, and that we saw this would be a place that needed to be integrated into curriculum. So much like the energy storage job task analysis, we broke this down into several different domains. You can see the 5 of them listed here: application, installation, O&M, data analytics, and then cybersecurity. I will say cybersecurity is actually a little bit outside the domain of what a typical technician would do in their job. If you're looking at a commercial building or an industry, they most likely have their own cybersecurity professionals that have a background in computer science and specialize in that area. But the solar technicians need to be able to interact with those individuals and understand enough about cybersecurity protocols that they can make the renewable energy system communicate with the larger business network. So let's just take a quick scan through these domains. In the application domain, again, the first one is just describing different types of control system applications. Then the second task, identifying features and benefits of integration of renewable energy in SCADA systems, listing typical components of SCADA systems, and then describing how each of the other domains in the JTA contributes to SCADA operations. On the installation side, again, this is one of the more lengthier of the portions of the job task analysis, starting with establishing communications, then integrating sensors and data sources with the network, configuring smart devices and testing. On the O&M side, the tasks break down into addressing those alarms and alerts that I described, troubleshooting faulty equipment, and then continuous monitoring to make sure that you catch any alarms or alerts rapidly when they do come up. Domain 4 is the data analytics. So once you gather all this information, what do you do with it? So you need to understand the data formats, file formats, and database organization. You need to be able to visualize that data, and then use statistics and trend analysis to extract patterns and meaning from that data. And then finally, understanding data storage and how that information is archived. The last domain, as I mentioned, being cybersecurity. First, understanding cybersecurity risks, understanding measures taken to minimize those risks. And that falls into task 3, understanding basic types of network security and encryption. Actually, task 4 is understanding types of data encryption. And then finally, task 5, understanding cybersecurity tools and techniques. So I'm going to pause my screen share again and just kind of open it up again. If anybody has comments or questions on the SCADA job task analysis, this is an area of the job that basically didn't exist 20 years ago, but we see as becoming increasingly more important as we look out to the next decade or so. As we have more and more of these systems online, it's going to be necessary to have a lot more information about how they're operating, and we need more people to be able to process that data.
This is Samara. I just have a quick question. So looking through, um, all the different lines that we're scrolling by, would most of this be done in a hands-on capacity then in the technical college classroom?
Well, so in a non-COVID environment, yes, most of our instruction is done hands-on. I can tell you that has changed completely over the last year. Madison College is now 80% online, and only 20% of our instruction is being done face-to-face right now. And that's really just the core skills where the students really need to put their hands on tools and equipment to do the physical work. But most of our content knowledge has been ported over to online formats right now. It'll be interesting to see, to what extent we return to face-to-face instruction after the virus. I can tell you for some students, face-to-face instruction absolutely works much, much better. And a lot of our students have really struggled with the online learning environment. But it's also allowed us to reach a larger audience of potential students that otherwise might not have been able to attend in person or might not have been able to attend classes that were offered during the day. So I'd be surprised to say that after the virus, we would go back to doing it exactly the way we did before. I think you're going to continue to see a lot of hybrid instruction where we leverage a combination of both online and hands-on instruction. But that'll also depend on student demand. If we have 5 times as many students enrolling in the hybrid course as we do in face-to-face, well, that'll kind of dictate how we do things, and vice versa. If everybody signs up for face-to-face and the hybrid sections don't fill, well, that tells us where our customers are, right? I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, so I'm gonna flip over to sort of transition a little bit here to just a couple slides that I'd like to share to frame up the remainder of the conversation. Let me see if I can do that. So we've shared those 2 job task analyses. I wanted to transition the conversation a little bit to some future forecasting and sort of visioning, looking out to the decade ahead. This is just a screenshot from a recent study by the World Resources Institute that looked at the state of climate action, looking at our progress made so far, and then projections for 2030. And they created this report with the sort of goal of trying to limit global warming to a 1.5 degrees C increase. And if you look at, there's many other studies like this that have been done. I've provided a few links to a few of them on the side here. There have been similar studies done by Princeton and C2ES and McKinsey. Lawrence Berkeley National Lab just came out with one before Christmas. All of these folks are kind of converging on this 1.5 degrees C as sort of being an upper threshold that if we want to avoid the very worst effects of global warming, we need to try and stay below that limit. And in each of these studies, they've looked at pathways to try and get us to that point. And they've all kind of converged on more or less a similar strategy where it comes to renewable energy. And that is, these studies are estimating that we need to increase the growth rate of renewable energy by a factor of 3.5 to 5 times to try and reach a target of 90% renewable electricity by 2030. That is a pretty daunting figure. For the last several years, solar and wind technician jobs have been the fastest growing jobs in America. I think that's been mentioned by a few speakers during the Renew Summit already today. And these studies are saying we now need to step on the gas and increase that growth rate even further. So to kind of facilitate the conversation here, I just provided a few talking points. The first one, like, is this growth rate feasible for the Midwest region? What does that mean? How do we get our human resources offices interviewing and hiring people that fast? And how do our firms grow that quickly? What are the biggest workforce needs necessary to support that growth? Where are the largest numbers of jobs? And then beyond just the largest number of jobs, what types of skills and qualifications are the most valued and the hardest to find? And then also I'd like to entertain a conversation about what other trends we should be watching for in the next 5 to 10 years that we didn't see in the most recent decade past. Because we know that this field is changing really rapidly. So for folks like myself at Madison College, we like to try and keep our finger on the pulse of industry and at least have a sense of where things are headed as we plan for future degree programs. So with those questions in mind, let me just throw open the floor and invite comments from anybody who's on the call. And I'd be really pleased to hear people's ideas.
Say, Ken, I'm wondering where your students are coming from. Are you getting people from rural Wisconsin or even outside of the state of Wisconsin?
Yeah, so I can tell you, Madison College was one of the first schools to actually offer online courses in renewable energy. We had a National Science Foundation grant back in 2005 that facilitated us putting some renewable energy coursework online. For a while back then, if you Googled renewable energy online education, we were like one of the top 2 or 3 hits that used to come up on Google. So if you go back, 10, 15 years ago, we had students from all over the country, but all over the world. I mean, I had students from Trinidad and, Suriname and Guyana and several students from China. That's calmed down since then. Now most colleges have an online presence, and there's many more colleges teaching renewable energy. So our student audience is, much more, confined to the South Central Wisconsin region at this point. The other thing that's kind of unique about our program at Madison College is about half of our students are in a traditional technical track. So they're maybe in our construction program or in our electrical trades program, and they're pursuing our renewable energy certificate in addition to their training in a traditional field. So when they graduate, they'll leave here as an electrical apprentice, but also have this renewable energy certificate. Or maybe they'll leave with an associate degree in architecture and then also have a renewable energy certificate so that they can design solar homes. The other half of our students are actually in our engineering program. So they might be an electrical engineering or mechanical engineering student, and then they're picking up the renewable energy certificate with the goal of going to become engineers in this field in the future. Hopefully work for renewable energy manufacturers or developers in that capacity. That actually makes our program a little bit different from the other ones around the state. There are 16 tech colleges in Wisconsin. Only about half of them have some type of a renewable energy program. And the programs are different from one college to the next, depending on their local workforce needs. I'm not sure if I totally answered your question, but I hope I at least.
No, that helps a lot. I'm just wondering, where are we going to get the bodies, the people to come in to fulfill that 3.5 times 5 times growth target?
Yeah, that's what I wonder too. And it's been hard this past year with the COVID epidemic, because normally we can, go visit students at local high schools to try and get graduating seniors. We can have open house events on campus so prospective students can come and visit campus, meet with faculty, and learn about our programs. And we haven't been able to do any of that this past year. Yeah. We've done a few virtual open houses, but to be honest, those were not as well attended as we would have liked. I guess the one positive thing I can say is that our survey of renewable energy class this past fall, which is the first course that students take, we had more students enrolled in that course than ever before. And that was despite the fact that the course was 100% online and we weren't really able to do recruitment. So I do think the message is getting out there to the general public that these are good jobs. They're family supporting jobs. They're jobs that can't be done by robots. They're jobs that aren't easily outsourced. And they're jobs you can get up in the morning, look yourself in the mirror and feel really good about the work that you do. So, I'm optimistic that for many of the folks that were displaced by this virus, people in the hospitality industry or the travel and leisure industries that, maybe we'll never be able to go back to some of those jobs. Hopefully we can provide an alternate career path for some of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
you were muted, Samara.
Got it. So I was going to say, kind of just the whiteboarding the idea, since we're a small group here, of where do we get people to fill these jobs? Has there ever been an approach of trying to recruit students who want to do a gap year between high school and college? Because this seems like it'd be kind of an optimal type of job where you can make money to save money for college. You can learn a skill. And my guess is many of the people who might come in would also end up staying in the industry or going to college and studying something that would contribute to the industry. But I know nothing about this, which is why I'm here.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, it never really occurred to me. And maybe that just demonstrates the fact that I'm old enough that there wasn't a thing called a gap year when I graduated from high school. But that's kind of a new phenomenon. And I know a lot of students do pursue that sort of thing now. So that's an interesting thought. Well, you know, one thing we have observed that I can tell you, I observed with my students in the survey of renewable energy course this past fall, and this is a small data set, but you know, I had students in there that had been planning to go away to school, you know, some of them going out of state, and then the COVID virus disrupted that plan. So when that happened and they ended up staying in their parents' basement or whatever to stay safe, they enrolled at the local community college. Now, you know, I don't know if they will finish the renewable energy certificate or if that was just a 2-semester experiment for those folks. But yeah, it's possible. Maybe that could be a source of future workforce for the renewable energy sector.
I just know that in my work, there's a lot of enthusiasm among student advocates for clean energy in high schools, and I think that if they could actually learn this trade, they would feel empowered to be part of the solution, not just thinking about it, but actually contributing to it, because you can do this job and do your advocacy work as well. They're not exclusive of each other. And that might be just a marketing strategy for students who are really motivated to reducing carbon emissions. Like, you can install solar panels by night and be a clean energy advocate by night, or by day, by night, whatever I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, that I mean, I can share with you that Madison College has a dual credit program with Madison Metro School District. And just in the last 2 years, we've set up a pathway for students in Madison high schools to earn this renewable energy certificate as they're moving through what's called our STEM Academy. Now that's relatively new, so we don't know how popular that will prove to be or how many students we might get. But we are going to be launching next year a dual credit course. So they'll actually be able to take the course that I teach, the Survey of Renewable Energy class, at their high school with one of their high school teachers that's basically going to be working with us as a team instructor, following the Madison College curriculum, teaching our same lessons, our same labs, and delivering our same exams. So for the students that are working through that dual credit pathway, that may in the future be a nice source of getting more students into the pipeline. The other kind of interesting.
Help you.
What's that?
Like, keep help you. I mean, these are our constituents, are the teachers who are in the high schools. And I'm speaking in my experience as a parent of 2 teenagers, one who just finished high school and the other who's in high school. The high school counselors who are advising students on what courses to take know nothing about this. And so we really, really need to speak to them in whatever their language is. And I speak 4 languages, and I don't think any of them is their language. This is not just for a certain group of kids. We need to hit them all.
Yeah, right. And you know, our funding at Madison College comes from the National Science Foundation. So that means that we're kind of restricted with what we can do with those grant funds, that we have to focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. But there's a whole bunch of students that are planning to go into business or economics that need to learn about this technology as well. Because if you don't have that finance side of the picture, projects just don't happen, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you one other interesting partnership that we've just started in the last couple of years, and we're getting our first few graduates coming through, is we have a partnership with Edgewood College, which is a liberal arts school here in Madison. And students that are majoring in science at Edgewood can simultaneously attend Madison Tech College and take our renewable energy courses. And when they graduate, they get a 4-year degree in physical science along with a renewable energy certificate from Madison Tech College. It's a great advantage for those students because in many cases, they're also able to do an internship through the tech college and work with a local employer at the same time and get some practical resume experience. So they come out of school with a 4-year degree and a technical certificate, and many times some hands-on work experience as well. That's also a pretty new program. We've only had a few students complete it so far, but we're optimistic that that might be a model for future growth also. And we'd be really happy to share any of those models and any of our experience with other schools that might be interested in replicating them. You know, we're kind of approaching it as an experiment that we hope succeeds, but if it succeeds, we really need a lot more schools to do it if we're going to meet this 3.5 to 5 times growth target.
Ken, can I add to what you were saying a little bit?
Please do, Gina.
Nice to see you, by the way.
Yes, nice to see you also.
I was just going to comment kind of on what Samara had said about with the high school students. You know, MREA launched our Solar on Schools program a couple years ago, and I was actually just working on the case study for the Solar on Eau Claire Schools program. They did 2 126 kW systems, one on each of the high schools there. And they're going to be, like you were mentioning as well, like incorporating the curriculum into the STEM classes. And I just hope that makes the difference. Like if we can start getting the PV on the roofs of the schools, and then the students like know it's on their school and it's powering their classrooms, and then start to learn about it at a younger age, then hopefully they do start to see it as like a potential career, right? Because I know like that's the same thing for MREA. I think one place we could really grow is building our relationships with the high school students as well, with the high schools, and helping like funnel and channel those students into jobs. And I manage our scholarship program as well. And I was working on promoting it yesterday. And that's another thing I've been looking at as well. So if people have suggestions, I'm open for that. Is we have these scholarships to give to students, high school, college, graduate, all different levels, to attend training at the tech schools for clean energy programs. But there's a disconnect, you know, it's like challenging to market the scholarship opportunity to all those people. And you know, the only way I know to go about it is individually by school, or, you know, through like the tech school partners we have. But if anybody has suggestions there, it's like, we're interested in growing this workforce by 3.5. That is a little daunting. And it's like, here we have some funding available to help the students get the jobs, but yet I don't know how to reach them always as well as could be.
Well, your thoughts about Eau Claire remind me of a couple things that I should mention to folks. When we did the PV installs at our campus, we went through a request for proposals process to get our developer, and we've made all of our documentation for that available to other schools so that they can replicate that if they want to get a system on their roof. You know, there's 800 some high schools in Wisconsin. If we're really going to grow this industry by 3.5 to 5 times, every one of those high schools should have solar on the roof of that school. And I think one way to get more people interested in the careers is when those schools do develop the solar on their roof, that's the perfect location to host a course for teacher professional development through the K-12 energy education program. And really, I mean, I'll be honest with you, you know, there's no reason why we need to do the Solar Training Academy at Madison College if there's another school that has solar on their roof that we can access and use as an instructional system. You know, I mentioned we've done courses on the road in Delaware and Seattle and down in Illinois. There's no reason we couldn't do one in Eau Claire. You know, we could drive to that one instead of having to fly across country to do the training. So, you know, for any district that has sort of a critical mass of instructors in the local area that are interested in that sort of programming, I can speak for Madison College. We'd certainly be interested in working with them, and I'm pretty sure the K-12 energy education program up at Stevens Point would be as well.
And I threw in the chat for Gina as well. I don't know how useful this would be, but it's a list from DPI of the CSA academic and career planning regional coordinators, because they have contact with all of the high school, middle school counselors and advisors. So that might be a way to get those resources out.
Thank you. That's great.
So Ken, one other follow-up question. Are you near capacity for your student load and the other technical colleges?
So we get that question a lot about, you know, are we full? Are there waiting lists? That sort of thing. We're really not in a situation where we have that problem. You know, I mentioned, you know, my class this fall had more students than ever before. And we have you know, a class capacity for all of our courses, and I had to overfill it. But that's not really a problem with an online course because we're not constrained by numbers of seats in the room. If we had been teaching face-to-face, all it really means for the college is that we need to open up another section. And perhaps we need to hire an additional instructor for our team. Fortunately, you know, we know a lot of folks in the industry that we could probably recruit somebody as an adjunct faculty member to come and teach with us. So I don't really foresee, at least anytime in the near future, that we would be turning any students away. And I think that's pretty true for all of the other technical colleges in the state as well. We've got more than enough headroom to, I think, accommodate additional learners. I mean, I think most of our programs could easily double in size without experiencing, you know, too many constraints.
Okay.
Of course, you know, if we look at these studies, doubling in size isn't going to do it. You know, we need to double and then double again, and maybe a third time if we're going to hit these benchmarks. So, you know, talk to me in 2 or 3 years, and maybe we'll be bursting at the seams if we're successful in our recruitment efforts. I'm curious to. I see Allison Bender is on the call there. I'm curious, Allison. You've been working quite a bit with students from local high school groups. I know you've worked a little bit with I think the KidWin program. Do you have any observations you can share with us at all?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about KidWin during this conversation, because the students that come through our middle school, starting in 4th grade, actually, middle school and high school students who design turbines and then come to the challenge. And these kids are fired up and super excited. And so I just want to continue to leverage their excitement and to be able to showcase to them the careers that are out there. And so, I mean, we do other things too, like field trips to our building pre-COVID, of course, online webinars and things like that. So if there's even something small at the end of every program that we add in that mentions some of these opportunities, or just kind of making it a thing that we refer back to anytime we're talking to students, to just kind of remind students that there are jobs in there, because this is the sort of thing, like, you don't probably have an aunt or uncle who works in the industry, you know, it's so new. So not a lot of people have that personal connection that they've known someone who does this, or I don't know. Those are some of the things that I'm thinking about, but I appreciate the conversation and hearing from you all.
I think you're definitely correct about that. You know, if a student is thinking about becoming a nurse or a teacher or a police officer or something like that, chances are they probably know somebody in their family or in their neighborhood that works in one of those professions that they can talk to. if somebody's thinking about becoming a wind energy technician, chances are they probably never met one, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very different thing. And for those that maybe aren't familiar with the KidWin program, it's an amazing program. They do a really great job of outreach to the K-12 sector. I think if we could get more public school teachers participating in that program in Wisconsin, that would be a huge thing for our state.
So for 2020, last year, the challenge grew 3 times the number of teams, but this year we're just sort of like, can we keep a few embers alive? You know, we're doing an online challenge, but it's a challenge for schools, you know, to do anything, but.
Yeah. I see Samara's put a link in the chat window for the KidWin challenge. I can tell you that for the Create Energy Center, when our face-to-face workshops got kind of all canceled due to COVID, we actually worked with KidWin and we sponsored, I think it ended up being close to 150 teachers that we were able to use some of our National Science Foundation grant funds to underwrite the cost of their participation in some online KidWin workshops that just took place between November and December of last year. And we had, I think it was 20, somewhere between 20 and 30 teachers that actually participated in all 3 of the workshops. So they did a workshop on wind energy, a workshop on energy efficiency, and one on solar. And I think it was somewhere between 20 and 30 teachers that participated in all 3.
Was that specifically Wisconsin teachers or?
That was across the country, yeah, because it's the National Science Foundation. So, you know, we fund anybody from any 50 states or US territories. But, you know, we will probably be doing another round of those workshops this spring yet. And, you know, I hope we get a few more Wisconsin teachers to participate if we do another round of those workshops. So it'll all depend on how long this COVID virus stretches out. You know, we may end up doing a lot more of that type of virtual programming in the future as well, because I think for a lot of teachers, it was easier for them to attend that way than it would be to go to an in-person event.
And there are some really cool things through White Box Learning. KidWin has a partnership. There's an online simulation model where you can engineer and design turbines that look like the KidWin turbines, and it can be really involved. So there are ways, if schools are completely virtual, to do just a computer-based thing this year. It's just a matter of getting the word out, I guess. And
that's White Box Learning, you said?
Yeah. They're hoping to launch it on February 1st. KidWin has a partnership that made it much more affordable for classrooms. So I can share more information with you if you'd like.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because we'll be publishing a newsletter for Create coming up in the next month, and that might be a nice thing for us to include an article on.
Yeah.
We reach on the order of about 900 teachers across the US. So, you know, letting more folks know about that certainly helps anybody who's teaching online. That sounds like a great resource.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Well, I think we're just about coming up at the end of our time here together. Does anybody have any parting thoughts or suggestions of things we should be looking for as we look out for the next 5-10 years?
I was going to actually comment on that. I think this is if any of you was at my session, you know that I'm kind of a map geek. So I didn't know about MISO before yesterday. So I Googled it and I looked it up, and like I have a whole new universe of energy to go out exploring. But I was so excited about that map of energy generation, the queue of energy generation, and looking on there, and there is no coal and there's tons of solar. And I'm like, yes, I can see the future. So I think the future is really promising, and I hope, and we're working on this, but trying to reach social studies teachers too, because I love maps, and maps are such a good way of telling so many different stories, threads of stories at the same time. So I hope that through social studies teachers, we might also be able to reach this rising generation of workers that we need.
Yeah, the next decade's going to be transformative, and that reminds me, I'll make a plug for the new tool that Renew created, which is their mapping tool for the renewable energy installations in the state, which is really pretty slick because you can filter it by different types of technology, you can filter it by different types of residential versus commercial systems, you can narrow down on different system sizes. That's a great tool, and it's going to be interesting to watch how that evolves over the next decade. Well, that's maybe a good final thought for us to part ways on. I thank you all for joining the session. We appreciate your feedback. I encourage you to use that link that I stuck in the chat box if you want to download the job task analyses and share them with your colleagues. We'd welcome any feedback from them. And I hope you're all able to enjoy the final day of the Renew conference tomorrow. I'll be there for the plenary session in the morning that Michael Vickerman is moderating, and hopefully see some of you there.
All right. Thank you very much, Ken. Excellent presentation and very informative.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Ken. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Can I put in the chat the White Box Learning link? But I'll try and pass along some information about the KidWin's partnership with it, because if a classroom were to use it on White Box Learning, it's super, super expensive, but KidWin is getting a partnership where it's like $25 for 5 kids or something like that. So it's reasonable for teachers.
If you've got some info you can send to me, we'll definitely put that in the newsletter. And
cool.
Then next time I talk to Michael Arkin, I'm going to have to ask him about it too, because he should have told me about that. That sounds amazing.
I think they're they've been working with the engineers at White Box Learning to negotiate this deal and then to make it work so that students can do an online challenge with this and just screenshot the data from this platform and stuff. So maybe he didn't want to talk before things were settled or something.
Yeah, I'm sure they're probably like everybody else, just scrambling to try and figure out this virtual platform, right? And
yeah,
you don't want to overpromise and then miss your deadline for the launch date. So
yeah, that's true. Well, thank you.
Well, good seeing you, Allison. And I hope someday soon we get into a post-COVID world and I can come judge for your KidWin competition again. I've always enjoyed that. So that
would be awesome. We'll keep you in contact. Thank you.
Sounds good. Have a nice afternoon.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.